All right, we are back with the Coyote Swap Fox Body, 1993. Of course, this is a 2011 Mustang GT 5.0 Coyote motor, Gen 1. And of course, you can see the new addition, which is a Gen2 R VMP supercharger system. We've got the blower up here. It was a full kit from VMP Performance. So you've got the blower up here, you've got the heat exchanger, comes with VMP fuel rails, bigger injectors, comes with the belt and all the pulley system that you need. Just have to do a little shaving on the block to get it in down there. We've also got, comes with the reservoir for the heat exchanger, comes with the intercooler. We had to do some custom mount brackets welded to the frame since this kit was made for a 2011 to 2014 Mustang GT. And we actually hid the heat exchanger pump underneath the bumper insert. So if you pull the bumper off, that plastic piece that runs across, it's tucked up in there. And we did the wiring. We ended up doing the extensions that they give you with the kit. It's pretty cool. All this has to be extended to run the rear mount throttle body. This is a dual blade. And you can see the other extension and then the evaporative emission solenoid back here, that extension. But we ended up running all that underneath the heat exchanger with protective heat wrap, and you can see the connector right there, one of them. But we'd already done a wire tuck on the Boss 302 intake install that we did prior to this blower because he didn't realize he was going to be going the blower route. You can see some dust up here. So we'd already done a wire tuck in your main wire harness. We've already separated the coil packs and the injectors, and the rest of it goes under the heat exchanger. So we went ahead and ran those extensions underneath the heat exchanger. Gives it kind of a clean look. Also added a JLT catch can, and that's pretty much it. The install is pretty straightforward, and this thing's ready to be tuned at VMP Performance. One addition to the setup that we added, of course, they give you the IAT sensor, and that has to be pinned in on pin 36 and spliced in on 56. And then we've got the, we added this was plugged. This is a boost and vacuum reference that goes into a gauge that we installed inside. Sorry about the tape, I gotta take that off. It was a little frayed there, I need to redo this. But either way, it's nice that they give you that option to run your boost gauge with. So since we're talking about that, let me go ahead and show you the setup real quick inside for the 8-pillar. So got some nice AEM gauges here for boost and for AFR. Only thing we haven't hooked up on the AFR is the wideband, because that needs to be welded in with a bung. But let's go back quickly before the video gets too long. Let's pull this out. This is what needs to be run underneath the car for your wideband. But the biggest change on this, besides the VMP blower, is we ended up pulling a Hydroboost unit out of a 1998 Mustang GT out of the junkyard. So this unit is a junkyard unit, but works great. Custom lines going into the factory proportioning valve for a 1998 Hydroboost Mustang. The fact that we got this in isn't too big of a deal. The big deal was you just don't have a power steering pump to tie into. That's the biggest deal with doing Hydroboost on a Coyote. So you either have to go with 4/6 brackets and accessories, and you have to get some really, really expensive brackets to use those accessories, and you have to, of course, rebuy all that or source it off a donor car. So the customer did not want to go that route. So what we did is we got a power steering pump. We tried a couple different ones, but this one worked the best. This is a power steering pump, electric power steering pump off of a 2005 Volvo S-40. So the great thing about this is all you need is power and ground to hook it up. 8 gauge, because it does pull a lot of amperage, but 8 gauge on your power and ground. Hook those right to the battery or distribution blocks if you got it. And then you've got a 1-wire setup here. That's your exciter wire. So you run that to accessory key on 12 volt. And that fires up the pump about 2 seconds after you give it power. So if you're testing these, give it 2 seconds and it will turn on. Your other 2 wires on this 3-wire plug right here are CAN bus. As long as you don't have that, you just have your 1 wire, it's gonna run on fail-safe mode, and it'll run about 75% of what the pump is capable of, which is plenty for just running brakes. This car does not have power steering. It's got a manual rack on it, so we are simply using this power steering pump as a hydraulic source for the Hydroboost. So let's come over here, show you guys the setup. So we've got our 2 custom high pressure lines, which one doesn't have to be high pressure, but we went with nicer lines, and it comes up. Let me show you the feed here. So you've got the one here. This is our main high pressure feed from the pump, and it comes in, does a 180 and goes in. And then you've got a low pressure out right here. You can see the stock line is still hooked up. And this comes up, we've got an adapter, and it goes into a -6 and returns to the reservoir. This is low pressure. But we were taxing the system too much because we originally had the pass-through that would go to your power steering rack capped, because we have no power steering, but it put too much of a load on the pump. So we went ahead and took the high pressure feed out, which is that line down there, into a -6, came up with some nice line and 90'd in and T'd into the low pressure return. And that's all it needed to take the load off the system, and that pump runs ultra quiet now, and does not pop fuses, does not get hot by any means, and works great. And it actually has fantastic brakes now. I can't recommend this setup enough. It took us some time to figure it out, but if you guys have any questions about this Hydroboost system, just post in the comments and I'll be glad to answer any questions or concerns that you guys may have about this setup. But as of right now, it is a full running, functioning, driving, stopping Coyote swap Fox body with a Gen2 R blower, and the setup is complete. The only thing it needs now is a custom tune from VMP Performance, which will be done next week. I know this is a long video, but let me go inside for anybody that hasn't seen this video or hasn't seen the previous videos. I'll take you inside. We wired in some Dakota digital gauges because the system will not work with the factory gauges. So we put this system in, everything interfaces through the Dakota digital module, but goes through the BIM 0102 box that interfaces with the factory Coyote ECU. The brain for it and the BIM module is underneath the seat, so it looks real clean. The wires go over there and then come down and feed. And then we've got the low car sport tap shift shifter. So the thing with this is, in order for sport tap shift mode to work, you got reverse, neutral, and drive. So once you're in drive, you can flick it over and you can upshift or downshift or however you want to set it up. But in order for the 6R80 transmission that comes with the Coyote motors, in order for it to go into sport mode with this powered by the hour ECU, you have to put it into third gear. Once you're in third gear, that will enable sport tap shift mode, but the shifter will only enable sport tap shift mode in drive. See right there, I have no pushover. But once you put it into drive, you've got the pushover. So they're sending us another model that will be calibrated for sport tap shift mode in third gear and not in fourth gear. So then we can hook up these wires into the ECU, and that will actually give us ability to shift the car. One last thing while we're here. So I've got the keys now, and just in case you wanted to see what this thing looks like with all the gauges running and everything like that, let's go ahead and fire it up. There we go, fires up. Of course, the check engine light's on because we have to get the tune updated. We have a base tune update from VMP that we've uploaded to it, but we're going for a real tune and they'll get rid of that with the correct tune on it. So the vacuum goes up to about 17 pounds once it's warmed up. Or 17 inches, I mean. Here it is running. You can see the heat exchanger pumping. The heat exchanger reservoir does not look like that. You need to bleed the system. You should see plenty of fluid going through there. So there it is. And real quick, for the people that have not seen the other video, I'll show you the trunk. See all the gauges work. If I do left blink, right blink, do high beam comes on. And of course, when you hit the lights, it dims. Well, it's kind of hard to see in the light, but it does do a dim. And there we are, 17, almost 18 inches of vacuum, which is looking good. And this is not reading. Again, we don't have this hooked up, so that's just dummy right now. But let me take you back to the trunk. Okay, well, there's the old intake, fuel rails and throttle body. But here's the battery we set up, rear mount. 0 gauge on the main, 300 amp fuse through the factory carpet with a grommet, pretty clean setup. That 300 amp is just to make sure that in case he gets into a wreck and it pinches the cable on the body, it will short this and not burn down the car. And this is our spider grounds. We wanted to make sure that this is very well grounded for the EFI system and all the electronics that we have on this car. So one goes forward to a distribution block and the other two go down to frame, different frame reference points. So this is a good setup. And that's it. Coyote swap Fox body with Hydroboost and a VMP blower.